Hey Naomi and Danielle, I don't know you were not Facebook friends or friends. Danielle and Jason, this is my response because Danielle's asked me to do a better job of explaining a project that, well, it's not mine and I'm not under contract with the Athletics. And that said, I would love it if any 62 Media were, but that's another story entirely. Let me explain what's happening here. We are just outside of a year that has passed since California Governor Gavin Newsom signed three pieces of legislation into law that have enabled and ignite the ballpark that ostensibly will be at Howard Terminal. It's just all that remains is city council action to actually create the redevelopment agency, where they were not going to use those terms, but that's what it will be, a redevelopment agency, to first of all create the zone and then have the organization that will collect the annual tax increment revenue to pay off the bond issue that will be used to finance the infrastructure improvements for the project. Now, I say that because it's very important to read the entire piece of legislation. I know Jason Ryman said he read the bond legislation. I would bet credits Navy Beans that, Jason, you didn't read the whole doggone thing, okay? I mean the whole thing. Because there's a great deal of prejudice that's coming into this. Like, for a number of you have sent me these poorly structured and age-old criticisms regarding stadiums and economic development, which really have nothing to do with this project. Because the idea behind the bond issue for this project is to cause the development of a number of, for want of a better term, things within various redevelopment project areas that can be constructed around the entire city of Oakland. Yes, I said that. As Oakland A's President Dave Cavallo confirmed to me in our interview from last week, the A's are taking a position that there are a number of improvements that can occur because of, or as he says, but for. In other words, all this happens because of the planned existence of this ballpark. If you read the legislation very carefully, as Jason did not do, you will find that the revenue that comes from infrastructure financing can be used for, and it says it in black and white, our military base program. That's right, our military base reuse program. It also allows for the construction of affordable housing, bridges, roads, transportation as well. You could basically build an entire new city down in Jack London Square or in that area if you wanted to, with the $1,400,000,000 estimated tax increment revenue that will be generated, assuming the base year assessed value is just $2 billion. Now, why do I say just $2 billion? Because you could put, and this is why the A's should stick to and are sticking to a privately financed and privately owned stadium at Howard Terminal, into the tax rolls. And that, if it's at $2 billion, becomes automatically the $2 billion base year assessed value. So let's say it's just the baseball stadium. If you allow that stadium to be increased, or, excuse me, the area around it is increased in terms of its value by a 4% annual rate of growth, which would not really happen if it was just the ballpark. You would have to expand it out. But let's say it's $2 billion. And then take that $2 billion and annual rate of growth of 4%, which is 3% less than the historic rate of growth, recent historic rate of growth has been for Jack London Square over the past 5 to 6, 7 years, and then extend that 40 years, that's $1,400,000,000. That's simply the way tax increment financing calculations work. Now, a number of you who are responding to this have no idea of Oakland's redevelopment history in detail. By contrast, my first job out of grad school in 1987, 1985, specifically September 16th of 1985, was with the Oakland Redevelopment Agency, where I worked for them and they rehired me as a consultant in 1987. And my first client was the Emeryville Redevelopment Agency, which was then ran by my good friend, Kofi Bonner. He and I were classmates at Cal. We both graduated from the city planning program. Now, I have made hundreds of redevelopment tax increment financing calculations. I created the computer model around which the Coliseum Redevelopment Survey Area was developed, which eventually became the Coliseum Redevelopment Area, the largest redevelopment area of its kind in the state and in history, at 6,000 acres. But I digress. Now, fast forward back to this project, okay? There are a lot of questions to this project, but what you have to understand is that for those of you expressing your views on a Facebook page and a Facebook group and acting as if you can, quote, do something about this right now, you are a year behind. There have not only been several pieces of legislation signed and approved. The Port of Oakland gave its stamp of approval months ago. It has went through a number of approval processes with a number of organizations, and it has just a few more to go. It has met with community groups many times over who have been very instrumental in the plan for the project. The Port of Oakland tried to get Howard Terminal as a property redeveloped. It did not. What is lacking here, if anything, on the city side is a point person to actually go out and explain to the public what's going on, to marshal the city's resources, and to make sure that the council, which is about to experience possibly some turnover, is properly informed regarding the project. On the city side, that's not in place, not appropriately. There is someone who has been working with it. That person has been more administrative than a titular head. A czar, if you will. I know some people hate that term, but I think it's appropriate for this, okay? But it's very important to, without emotion, look at the project, absorb all the detail, ask a bunch of questions, but not come off as if you know what this is. It's not. That's not it. In fact, one council member made the same mistake regarding the project before I explained to them privately how it worked. They then changed. And I didn't explain to them how it worked to get them to change their votes or anything like that. That's not my role. I'm not lobbying, okay? I'd love it if we're at the Coliseum, but it's not. We have to get something done. My interest is in seeing that Oakland has the will and the initiative to complete big projects. And consistently, Oakland has proven that it does not. And there are many people, I don't know if people in Oakland are afraid of success or jealous if someone doesn't get something because it doesn't involve them. They think there's something psychological going on that consistently pours its way into projects like this. And it needs to be harnessed and modified so that it can be part of the positive and not the negative. Too often it's part of the negative. But I think the reason is the simple complexity of projects like this versus the lack of desire of some to really get into the complexity and understand them. But those people, as Danielle, I think, pointed out in a way, would shoot back, hey, it's not for us to completely understand everything. Talk to us like we're 5 years old. I get that. Here's how it works. The money will not help build the stadium specifically, but it will make it easier for the A's to build it, and it will make it easier for the Athletics to provide many of the desired social good developments that are needed. Most notably, affordable housing, okay? Among all. That started a long time ago. In fact, you're looking at the person that worked to get the Athletics president to consider tax increment financing to begin with. That was a call that he and I had on the 4th of April, 2017. Now, the bottom line is, I think Jason Reitman said there's a 1% tax. That's completely wrong. And Jason, if you don't know something, just admit you don't know, okay? Because there's a lot that you put out there, like you're like King Kong and all this stuff, and you're making these declaratory statements that are completely wrong. And, you know, I'm thinking, why? Why not have a conversation about how it works rather than these stoppages, which, basically, I might add, caused me to have my own stoppages, which is basically like on the order of, hey, man, you have no idea what you're talking about. But I would think that would open up a conversation. It doesn't with you. Okay, it's like, oh no, I know, and that's it. No, you're wrong. You're completely wrong. And it stops the way you present it. It stops conversation. It's like, I know, and that's it. Well, no, it's not true. The 1% rate is the base rate of property taxes charged by Prop 13. This is just simply a shifting of where the tax money goes, in this case to redevelopment. Technically, it's actually more than that. It's more like 1.27% because of a number of subventions we've added on over the years, but I digress, okay? So it's very important to sweat the details, to talk them out, and avoid these statements that stop conversation like, I know, and therefore, and I'm going to show you, or I'm going to show you this Brookings article, which has nothing to do with the project because it doesn't consider this project. The problem with articles like that is that for people who are prejudiced against, say, a stadium or anything like that, it causes them to continue to be anti-intellectual, to continue to throw out prejudices about something without actually learning about a specific project. Each one of these projects are different, so you have to evaluate them on a case-by-case basis. This one was legislatively designed to be of benefit to Oakland. The proof's in the pudding. All you have to do is eat it. Have a taste. Subscribe to Zenny62 and bookmark oaklandnewsnow.com.